On Saturday, the 21st of September 2024, we saw Daniel Dubois announce himself fully and send a shockwave into the world of heavyweight boxing with his victory over Anthony Joshua. Now, while there's so many factors as to why Daniel Dubois came out on top of that, there was something that I spotted which was a psychological model Daniel Dubois was not doing and Anthony Joshua was, that could have contributed to the fight going the way it did. And this psychological model is something that you could be doing exactly now, and it's stopping you from performing your best when under pressure moments. And so in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what that psychological model is, why it has positives and negatives to performance, and what you can do to make it work for you. All right, so this video is going to be hung around the Daniel Dubois versus Anthony Joshua fight. Now, just to give you an insight. And before we start, I just want to make sure you understand that this is my opinion. This is not exactly the reasons why Anthony Joshua lost the fight, Daniel Dubois won it. There are many factors that go on with it. This is from my experience as a professional athlete, because I know this happened to me, and also my experience as a student of performance psychology, as well as being a mindset coach, speaking to various athletes and coaches and academics on the Raising Your Game podcast. And this is going to be what I think was going on in the mind of Anthony Joshua. But having said that, I have never been in a boxing ring. I do not have any boxing experience. So I don't know exactly what's going on. No one will, apart from the two that are in the ring, because they are all that matters. Everything goes out the window when you have got a human tank coming at you, throwing their fists and trying to hit you in the face. This is best guess, but there are just some things that I noticed and saw which brings about some ideas and insights into what could have been happening, because there are just so many things going on. None of this is done with any malicious intent. It's all in good faith. I have no right being anywhere near a boxing ring, but I just know experiences of being in professional sport, as well as psychological processes that go on, and this could be something that is happening to you and you might find value from it. So let's get in with it. It's all good fun and all good learning. So what is this psychological model? It's called self-presentation, by which people monitor and control how they are being perceived by others. Ultimately, it's just what image we are trying to show other people. And so with this model, we want to show the world a version of ourselves. And in the terms of sport, this image that we're trying to portray is someone who is capable, is mentally tough, and we're trying to avoid looking like we can't when we're under pressure. And there is some research that suggests that self-presentation is linked with choking under pressure, but it is to be warned that that's just not everything. This is just one thing that could contribute to the chaos that is when you're under pressure in sport. And so the way I like to think of self-presentation model for me is that there are two selves that are running alongside each other at any one time in a performance. There's you, the self that's in the performance with all of the goals, the execution of skills that are needed to do the performance, and then there's also the self that you are trying to show the outside world. Kind of like a mask and kind of like an actor with a version of yourself that you're trying to portray. Now, there are good and bad things about both of them, but ultimately there is a balance that has to be found, because the ultimate important version of you is the one that's in the performance trying to get the job done, because your goal is to get the outcome, is to get the result that you want, to have everything go your way and try and get the positive result. And the version that is your self-presentation version of you, that is the one that you're just trying to show to everyone. It might be an image that you want to portray to everyone, whether things are going well, whether you're confident, whether you are strong and capable in that moment. But that can conflict with your performance. So we're going to show it through the Daniel Dubois and Anthony Joshua fight, but there are many examples. It's just that it showed up in this fight. So a very quick background on these two fighters is that Daniel Dubois is an up-and-coming fighter, 27 years old, holds the IBF heavyweight belts. Anthony Joshua was trying to take those belts off him and contending for them, also a two-time heavyweight champion himself. A huge fight in British boxing, 96,000 people crammed into Wembley to watch two giants going at it. And this was a fight that was set up and built up to be a great fight. Anthony Joshua was the favorite. He had been building in form. Daniel Dubois, relatively new and exciting in the sport, but has been in the ring with the likes of Alexander Usyk and others where he has started to show his real promise. And so really, the fight was really for Anthony Joshua to go in there and perform, and he was lauded as the favorite going in. Anthony Joshua, already a lot of pressure going into the fight. Daniel Dubois, pressure for him to really show himself on the world stage, in the biggest stage that he's going to have in his career, and also announce himself as really a true champion rather than having been given the belts that he has currently on him. When you see them going into the ring walks, you see two athletes that are crazy focused. I couldn't see anything in those ring walks where you would suggest that one was nervous or one was overexcited. They both looked calm, cool, collected. Daniel Dubois looked relaxed. He was focused on what he was doing. His eyes were just fixated on getting to the ring, and then when he was in there, he was just moving around and he looked ready. Anthony Joshua, calm, steely, looked really focused on what he was doing. So before the bell went, you really didn't know what was going to happen. It was, like they would say, on. But then straight into the first round, Anthony Joshua gets hit with a huge right hand and is put onto the canvas. I've never been hit by someone this size. I can only imagine what it does to you psychologically, and ultimately both fighters would have been going in with some form of game plan. And as soon as AJ got hit in the face like that and got rocked, it then turns into survival mode. There are interviews after where he spoke about it just became survival mode and it became all about heart, and that's what you started to see. But there was something that you also see creeped in, is that because AJ is a huge brand, he has got a lot to lose now as an individual. You started to see moments where he was starting to self-present and he was showing a version of himself where he looked cool, calm. It looked like everything was fine. If you look at Daniel Dubois all the way through the fight, he looked like he just was fixated on what to do. He was just ready and he was aiming his target at AJ, and he was just going towards his game plan. And so whatever game plan AJ might have had, it could have been thrown out completely with that right hand that Daniel Dubois threw, and then it just becomes about preservation, survival mode, and just staying in the fight as long as you can. Okay, so what does any of this have to do with self-presentation? Well, he started to present himself as if everything was okay, and that he kind of had it and looked like he was in control. You saw at the end of, say, the first round, he stuck his tongue out towards Daniel Dubois, sort of an indication that, nah, I've got this, we're all okay. And then later on, he smiles at Daniel Dubois, just sort of in the ring, where he's pumping his chest, showing that he's all good. He looked towards the crowd and sort of nodded at them to say, like, I'm okay, I'm okay. When in reality, he wasn't okay. He was getting beaten by Daniel Dubois. He was taking a beating, and that takes a lot of energy away from the game plan of trying to get back into the fight. It slows you down. It stops you from focusing on whatever game plan it is that your team are telling you, whatever's going on in your mind, because you're constantly battling between how am I coming off and what is it that I've got to do. You then see just towards the end of the fourth round, when he got knocked down onto the floor, he then starts to point to Daniel Dubois to take a seat, and it's kind of a bit of showmanship, and this all can work. Self-presentation can work in the sense that you want to present a version of yourself. This is where self-presentation can be harmful. When athletes spend so much time trying to present a version of themselves, it becomes a problem because it takes them away from getting the job actually done. And like I said, when you're trying to uphold this one image, you're spending a lot of your time essentially flicking between upholding an image, performing in the moment, and you're working between those two things, when actually the thing you should be focusing on is what is needed in this performance to get the job done, regardless of what I look like. But this conflict that gets created can be massively draining for an individual, because you're constantly trying to focus on the game plan, then go back to, well, how am I looking? What is it being presented? How's it going to be shown? Does the other person that I'm coming up against, the opponent, think that I'm cracking? They've got the advantage. You don't want to show that advantage. So it becomes absolutely a minefield when you are just trying to constantly work between those two things. But on the flip side, self-presentation isn't always a negative. Sometimes in positive light, it could be the thing that could completely change the momentum of a game or a fight in this case. So if you are showing a confident version of yourself, it just shows that it may not have an impact. And ultimately, the key is having balance, knowing, are you in a position where you need to be focusing on presenting yourself, or are you in a position where you really need to be focusing on the game plan? And so if we then look at Daniel Dubois and what he did differently, there was nothing to show that he was really concerned about his image. He looked so focused on his game plan to the point where every time he got up out of his corner, he just looked like he was eyes on Anthony Joshua and trying to get the job done. He knew exactly what he was trying to do. He was listening to his corner and he was just going in and doing it. There was no looking to the crowd, looking at Anthony Joshua. He was just fixated on trying to execute his game plan. And ultimately, there was no real showing of self-presentation in Daniel Dubois. Even after the fight, when he won, he was pretty calm, relaxed. He just walked around the ring and he actually went to Anthony Joshua to check he was okay. He just went from person to person, and he still looked like he had some sort of focus in his eyes, that he was waiting to execute some game plan. And you see this in other fighters as well. There's been fights with Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder when he got floored onto the canvas, but then when he got up, he stayed focused on what he had to do, just focused on trying to execute the game plan to then eventually beat Deontay Wilder. The undisputed champion of Alexander Usyk has done that time and time again. Every time that he has been knocked down or has been on the back foot, you just see him constantly focusing on his game plan. He doesn't showboat to the crowd. But on the flip side, Tyson Fury has actually showboated to the crowd, and it's cost him against his fight against Alexander Usyk, where he was starting to look to the crowd, try to show that everything was okay. And then you look at Usyk, and he was not self-presenting. He was putting all of his energy into the game plan, trying to get the job done and focusing on that. So what does it mean for you? How can you use self-presentation? How can you use it to your advantage? Ultimately, 3 things. Be aware of it. Be aware of the image that you want to project. What is it that you're trying to put out there? And don't allow it to overwhelm you over your actual performance. Secondly, check in with yourself when things aren't going your way. Check in to say, am I focused fully on this game plan, or am I trying to focus on what people might think of me right now? Because the chances are that if you're focusing on what people are thinking of you or perceiving you as, there's a lot of energy that's being taken away from the game plan that you're actually needing to do. And number 3, stick to your plan. Stick to your game plan. Make sure that you're focused and locked in on it, because you'd rather come away from a loss knowing that you gave everything to your game plan, everything to trying to win it, than being distracted by something that wasn't helping you to actually getting the job done. All right, so to wrap up, first off, Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, huge amounts of credit for both going into the ring. There's no way that I can do it, and competing at that level requires an insane amount of mental toughness, focus, dedication. So the utmost respect goes to both of those fighters. And this was only just to give my opinion on something that I saw. And the reason I know that is because I've experienced it myself. I've been on live TV trying to perform, and I've got it wrong, because I was trying to present a version of myself that was not focused on a game plan. So I know exactly what this feels like, and I just saw signs of it in this fight on Saturday. But once again, huge respect to Joshua and Dubois. This was my personal take on it. I'd love to hear what yours is. Put it in the comments. Let us know what you think of that fight, what you saw, maybe something that I've missed. But if there is something that you also want to do to improve your mental fitness, then you're going to want to watch this video next.